This movie has only love for people. Most certainly is a feminist film.
Like that's like one slice of the pie.
Pretty big
It's
slice.
a big slice, but
and is pretty, I mean, like, when I think of it, this sort of...
Barbie isn't really a film about Barbie at all. It's 1 hour and 54 minutes of extended misandry. It's a deeply anti-man movie that paints any form of masculinity, other than the most anodyne, as toxic. If the roles were reversed, it would be denounced, quite rightly, as deeply offensive. Sarah Vine, Daily Mail, and Sarah's not alone, high-rated negative reviews make similar observations. When we compare this to Margot Robbie and director Greta Gerwig's interview, things get interesting, because during this interview they're both reluctant to answer questions about the movie's themes, and when they finally say something, it's deliberately vague and cliched. In other words, they show all the signs of knowing that this movie isn't as quote-unquote innocent as they portray it as. Let's take note of the unreliable language that we should be aware of in our own lives as well. Welcome to the channel where we get to the bottom of what people are saying, what people are actually saying.
And also I think the thing that we knew that like was also at the core of it was not just like vis-a-vis the brand but just the story and the characters was that like I knew and Margot knew and all the actors knew that what we wanted at the center of it was just a really big heart.
It takes us 25 seconds to get to one of the simplest points possible, as if there are directors who wouldn't want there to be a heart in their movies. With phrases like at the core of it and the center of it, she foreshadows that something profound is about to come, but it never does. She stumbles over her own words, making self-repairs and interjections, signifying withheld, undisclosed information. Thus, there's a misalignment between her behavior and what she ends up saying. She uses the adverb just, which is dependent on another thought, and typically the opposite thought, like when someone says, "we're just friends." This suggests that she's oversimplifying, because she's comparing just a big heart to something else that she's not telling. The upspeak, asking rather than stating, underlines the uncertainty of what she's saying.
Just a really big heart, and that part of it was so important for me, that however anarchic or crazy or throwing elbows the movie was, that the thing that you walk away with was this feeling of this heart in the middle of it.
Here we learn the reason why she highlights the so-called heart, because she knows there are scenes that will make people doubt her heart, to use the same empty jargon. Thus, Greta mentioning this heart is self-protection, not a sudden love for all people. It's so that she won't be misunderstood from her point of view.
And I was like, well, I'm not lying to them. That's true.
Yeah.
And so that I can tell, I can look them in the eye and say, you might not love this or that, but I'm telling you, like, this movie has only love for people, because it did.
It doesn't sound like her own arguments convince her. Firstly, she says she's not lying, thus letting us know that lying is and/or was on her mind for some reason, and that she has considered or is considering that it is and/or was a lie. In any case, she's trying hard to convince herself and Margot, or more likely, get Margot to follow suit. Secondly, we notice her upspeak again.
Only love for people.
Asking rather than stating, which again points to this being a generic message designed for the occasion, rather than being anything remotely heartfelt. Also, the absurdity of the claim is exposed when we look at it through the lens of the argument model. Her claim is that the movie only had love for people, and her grounds are because it did. These aren't grounds at all, it's circularity on full display. With the adverb only, with which she feels the need to linguistically solidify her claim, she actually points to the possibility of her knowing that there are other things in it than only this alleged love. She keeps seeking emotional support from Margot, underlining how unsure she is about what she's trying to state as fact. We can always recognize an unreliable and even deceptive message by the lack of specificity. I once witnessed a debate where a politician claimed to love all people. How can you love all people? How is that even possible? What does love even mean or matter then? And of course he didn't. during the debate, it quickly became clear that there were several groups of people that he didn't like. It's this generalizing, all-loving language that people should be aware of, because the people using this kind of language almost always have self-serving motives for doing it, like Greta.
We're capable of the most incredible things.
No, not that Greta.
But we were like, none of this is going to feel mean-spirited. Like, we are poking fun at ourselves. Like, Mattel's a character and Mattel's going to poke fun at itself. Like, we're going to be self-aware, and that is the access point. But when we deliver that, it is going to be delivered from a place of love. And the overall feeling is to kind of deliver an uplifting experience.
So it's interesting that
Margot underlines the duo's love tactic. The convenient, extremely unspecific word love is used to justify what they're doing in the movie and in this interview. I was wondering. Yes? I'm not mad, it's just, why do I always end up paying for lunch? I'm not trying to... No, it's okay. I understand why you're asking. You see, I have a big heart. And because I have a big heart and love all people, I would never stand in the way of someone else with a big heart doing something nice for someone else. And obviously, my friend, you have a big heart. Thanks. I guess. You don't need to guess. It's true. Well, thanks. You're welcome. So, let's go for lunch. Next, the vagueness and question dodging reach astronomical proportions.
Clearly, Mattel still talk about it in slightly different terms to you two, but somehow, they don't like to call it a feminist film. The actors seem very comfortable with talking about it as a feminist film, but somehow it doesn't matter that you talk about it differently.
Yeah, I mean, well, it most certainly is a feminist film, and I think that the sort of...
Can you explain that? Why? How so?
With her intonation and vowel stress on the verb is, Greta foreshadows an upcoming contrast in form of the conjunction but, which minimizes and negates that which precedes it. She forms her lips to pronounce the bilabial plosive, which the initial sound in but is called. However, she performs self-repair instead, most likely realizing that she can't minimize and negate the fact that it's a
feminist film.
If she did, she wouldn't be in good standing with the Buzzword club she wants to remain part of in order to keep making money. But on the other hand, she can't emphasize the ideology because that wouldn't sell tickets. This sort of is a hedge expressing equivocation. Equivocation allows the speaker to retract or moderate their statements at a later point without making it sound like they're contradicting themselves. Greta isn't saved by the bell, but by Margot, who continues with the same deliberately vague language. Because we can't let the movie's real agenda be known.
Most certainly is a feminist film, and I think that the sort of...
Can you explain that? Why? How so?
To me, it's like that's like one slice of the pie. Like, it's so...
It's pretty big.
It's a big slice, but like, I don't know.
I know.
I also wouldn't call it a funny film, because then that discredits the fact that it's got a lot of heart and it's got a lot of emotion and it's got a lot of like movie references, all this kind of stuff. I'm like, it is funny. That is a huge part of it. It's a comedy.
Right.
But
she seeks to minimize the ideological influence in the movie.
To me, it's like that's like one slice of the pie.
But Greta almost ruins it for the both of them, and Margot obviously doesn't find it funny.
Like, it's so...
It's pretty big.
It's a big slice, but like, I don't know.
I know.
I also would...
Instead, she finds a new way to evade the question by turning people's attention to comedy and what's funny. It's noteworthy how Margot tries to sound assertive about this, as if it's what they've been talking about all along, which it isn't. But anything to give that impression in order to shift focus. I wonder if she's been taking lessons in question dodging.
What does the work entail? What do you do?
Yeah, so last February, actually, I went to Rwanda, which was incredible because Rwanda has the highest percentage of female political participants of any other country in the world, so 64%.
Obviously, then, they're both very much aware that the movie is about ideology, but that wouldn't sell tickets. But the diversion doesn't end here. The play on words continues.
But it's like, I mean, I think to whatever that sort of like, it's also a humanist film because it's like the humanity, insofar as you can call it, of like Barbie and Ken is what's paramount in the film. And at the beginning of the movie, You know,
Do we know? Does Greta herself know? Because it sure doesn't sound like it. With the expression "you know," she shows acute awareness of herself in the interviewer, appealing to alleged shared knowledge. It points to internal stress in this situation where she's looking for a way to evade the question by focusing on something else, underlined by the unusually long pauses and very noticeable self-repairs. Humanist. That's one of the most generic, unreliable words Greta could have chosen to evade this question with. According to one definition, a humanist is a person having a strong interest in human welfare, values, and dignity. Because this movie is truly about dignity, you see it in every scene. According to another definition, in a scientific sense, a humanist is a person who believes that reason and evidence are the best ways of finding out about this world. So, which is it, Greta?
you know,
That's the thing with question dodging. You always end up in situations you don't want to be in, but can't get out of. All because you didn't start with a clear answer.
Quite a brave decision too to give Ken such a big character in the end, to take him away from being the cipher that he's always been into a real thing.
right, which is, you know, but
It seems that the interviewer is completely fine talking about something else because, of course, we can't hold interviewees responsible for answering. Also, I remember a time when interviews with directors weren't about buzzwords like brave and empowering messages, but about ideas. Let's watch a short clip of David Lynch commenting on the main idea for one of his movies.
A name of a certain illness, psychogenic fugue. So sometimes we do things that throw the balance off so much that we're tossed into something like a psychogenic fugue. And that's, Fred Madison.
Now, let's watch Greta's fumbling answer in comparison.
but that in that way, it's giving him, you know, humanity, as it were, as a doll, as you know, whatever these kind of knots on knots that we have of the world of Barbie. But
Her excessive hand gestures overcompensate for the lack of content and determination in the words that happen to come out of her mouth, and she looks at Margot for emotional support. This is a pattern by now, a pattern she obviously finds uncomfortable. And next she changes subject to something even more generic.
yeah, I mean, I also think I will say just the existence of this film in the way that it does is pretty incredible and is pretty, I mean, like, when I think of it, this sort of as it stands, I'm like, this is amazing that this movie is made, and it's made the way it is with Margot as a producer and a star, and what the story is of the movie. It feels sort of unbelievable that it's been made.
In the way that it does, she says, but that's the problem. She hasn't been able to describe what it does. We haven't heard anything about why this story is supposedly incredible, amazing, and unbelievable, as she says, using grandiose language. But let me guess, it just is. Greta has tried to postpone the real answer and what's really on her mind, but now that even she has realized that it doesn't work, she has to give the information she's been trying to withhold. Well, sort of course.
But I think it's feminist in a way that includes everyone. It's like it's a rising tide lifts all boats version of it.
Yeah,
She immediately moderates her admission with the conjunction but, thus implying that she knows there are versions of the ideology that aren't so-called inclusive, which is the buzzword she resorts to. The deliberate lack of specificity is striking, or amazing and unbelievable, if you will. There's no talk about the ideology, just that it's inclusive. We should always be skeptical, to say the least, when this word is the first thing on somebody's mind, because it suggests that it's exclusive to certain other people. Why else mention the word?
I had a really clear job to do when I took over Bud Light. What does evolve and elevate mean? It means inclusivity.
She's still nervous talking about it. The unnatural self-repairs, pauses, and even grammatical errors point to that.
In a way that includes everyone.
All of this points to deeply unreliable and even deceptive information.
I think some people hear the word feminism means that doesn't mean men, and I'm like, well,
Yeah, no, it does mean men.
Anyone who believes men and women should be equal is
It's just-
feminist.
it's that simple.
But I think
The term equality here is ambiguous at best and deceptive at worst. What kind of equality are they talking about? Equality of opportunity, that everybody gets the same chance to achieve something, or equality of outcome, which is favoritism.
And said, well, we made a condition of the license that they hire women in technical positions, and you were one of them. The fact that that opportunity was afforded me, it's really put me in a position to make decisions.
Knowing Hollywood and the opinions that are mainstream there, this oversimplifying definition, so-called, is difficult to trust. Greta says it's that simple, but if things were that simple, then why didn't she just give a simple answer to begin with? Unintentionally then, she implies that it's not so simple at all. Everything in this interview means something else.
So what is it for you in the film? If you think, if you guys are comfortable, you guys, there I go, look at me, you know, if the actors, if all the people on set are comfortable, they get that the word belongs to the film, how so?
I just can't wait to hear the quick and clear answer to this. Go Greta.
I think it belongs to the film because I think it's, because when we were making it, the whole, Barbie is like an icon that, as Margot was speaking to, that it's both, she exists in the both and, not the either or. She's not either good or bad, or, you know, is that diving into the complexity of it and not running away from it, but like looking at all the thorniness and stepping into it, and also looking at all the thorniness and stepping into what is the negotiation of what women need to be.
That makes so much sense. I totally get it now. Don't you? Greta sets new standards for self-repairs. While they're normal in conversations, this is extreme, especially when answering questions that are clear. Diving into the complexity is the phrase she ends up using, which is funny considering she hasn't said anything that makes this movie sound complex at all. Instead, all that seems to be complex is to get actual answers. In that sense, this interview is about diving into the complexity of giving honest answers, which Greta obviously finds uncomfortable. We never hear what this thorniness is or what she's stepping into. There are no clearly defined grammatical objects in these incomprehensible sentences. All of this points to a misalignment between what they're saying and what they're thinking. They aren't saying what they're thinking.
And how to give them something other than a tightrope to walk on is how it feels feminist to me.
It's quite remarkable how the interviewer is able to accept this, because she's not getting clear answers. Actually, she's not getting answers at all. However, that probably speaks to the state of modern journalism, where no answers are needed when you're on the same side as the people you're interviewing.
Knowing what you know now, if you could go back, would you send this can to this one person again?
There's a big social conversation taking place right now, and big brands are right in the middle of it.
So how much is this marketing boo-boo, whatever you want to call it, costing Bud Light in the end? Tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars?
We're focusing on investing behind the brand right now. So we're actually increasing the investment on Bud Light 3 times this year as we move forward.
People still like beer. They like it a lot.
Yeah, people love beer, and I think we're on the doorstep.
People love Bud Light.
I hope you found this interview as entertaining as I did. If you liked the video, click the like button and subscribe for future videos. See you next time for an empowering video.